Bungie has been developing raids for the Destiny franchise for well over 8 years at this point in time, and it still feels like they don't exactly know what they're doing. They make some very strange changes from every raid in terms of the loot structure, in terms of the challenges, and so on and so forth. In today's video, I'm going to be giving them criticism for the things that I think the Master Raid fell short on, but I will also give praise for the things that were good in the Master Raid. The first thing I want to mention is that the Master Raid came out with little to no announcement. We had like 3 or 4 days before they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, Master Raid, this reset. We're like, wait, what? Usually there's like some sort of timeline or reveal a few weeks in advance. We were kind of expecting this to come out mid-season, but for whatever reason, they chose to come out with it on the 4th week of the season, which I actually like. I like the Master Raid to come out a little bit faster. And so I actually enjoy it coming out faster. I just thought there would be a little more of a setup, so that way we'd have time to know, like, what is the time frame we're working with? When will we get the Master Raid? What is the loot structure going to be like? How should we approach the Master Raid? Bungie, give us some information. Instead, we got pretty much absolutely nothing. We were kind of led to believe that it was going to be similar to WoW and its loot structure, and it was not in any way. It was its own entire loot structure, and it's kind of terrible in terms of how you get the Adept Weapons. Right now, what you have to do is beat the Master Raid and the challenge. It's on Encounter 1. I made a video if you haven't seen it yet. And when you do so, you're awarded just one specific weapon, and it's the Adept Sidearm this week. So if you want to get the Adept Shotgun, the Adept Linear Fusion, you have to wait until that week comes up. What week will that be? We have absolutely no clue. There is no schedule. There is no structure to this at all. It could be week 6 is the Adept Shotgun. It could be next week. We don't know. We'll just have to wait until reset comes around, and we'll have to beat the challenge, which is okay. It's nice to have some surprises, some mystery to the game, but when it's something that's meant to be like pinnacle endgame challenging content, usually there's a little more structure to it than that. And I personally would have preferred to know what weapon it's going to be. And also the fact that we're locked into just one weapon feels awful, right? You don't want to have just the one weapon drop. Instead, it should probably mirror the loot pool structure of the normal raid loot pool instead. I think that would be a lot better, or just have it be a completely random adept can drop from you. That way what you would do is log in on all 3 characters, beat the challenge, maybe get the shotgun, maybe get the linear fusion, maybe get the grenade launcher, auto rifle. Who knows which one you're going to get, but you will get one drop to you, and make it be bad luck protection so you don't get just a bunch of duplicates. So then you don't just get 3 auto rifles, right? That would be a much better loot structure, I think, because as it stands right now, we're going to have to wait potentially another month or so to get some of the adept drops that we're actually looking for, like the slug shotgun, the linear fusion, the trace rifle, or whatever it may be. So I definitely take issue with the loot structure with this raid, and I find it a bit frustrating. It also is a little bit nonsensical because there are 6 weapons in this raid, right? And so if one specific weapon drops per encounter and there's 6 encounters, how exactly is this going to work? Encounter 1 drops the sidearm, week 1. Week 2, what is that going to drop? 3 and 4? And then what's going to happen on weeks 5 and 6? Or how are we going to unlock the other remaining weapons? Is it going to go in a loop formation? Is it going to go back to challenge number 1 and drop a different weapon other than the sidearm? I have no clue how Bungie is going to do this. I have no clue how they're structuring the Master Raid, and no one does. They have given us no information. So it feels very chaotic and nonsensical. It feels very rushed and last minute, just as the announcement was, and just was a lot of things in this DLC with Lightfall feels very rushed. So the other thing I will mention that is a bit frustrating with the Master Raid is the armor that you get. You only get armor drops when you complete the Master Raid. And so if you want to get some adept drops, obviously you just do the challenge, but there's almost no incentive to do the rest of the Master Raid. To do encounters number 2, 3, and 4, you just get armor. And obviously it is high stat armor, which is nice. And it is the raid armor, which you can slot in some of those more powerful mods, but you don't really need that stuff. It's not essential. It's not even as good as artifice armor, which you would get from the master dungeons, which feels very off, right? You should get the best armor in the game from doing the most challenging end game pinnacle activity, which would be the master raid of the current raid. This should definitely give you the most rewarding armor. It should be both high stat and artifice armor, honestly. So that way you're even more incentivized to do the master raid over doing the dungeons. I think a lot of people would be way more appeased by that. As it stands right now, you basically just want to farm the first encounter challenge on all 3 characters, and then you're good for the week. Doing encounters 2, 3, and 4, you could do it if you want the challenge, but you're literally just getting armor, and you're going to stress and have a hard time, especially if your team struggles at all. You're going to have a hard time for literally no reason at all. You're not going to want that armor. It's not that appealing. It's not that interesting. You can play the game. You can beat the raid just as fine without the raid armor with high stat. It is a high resilience week though, so I will say if you do actually beat those encounters, you can get some decently high stat armor. However, you can get high stat armor in a variety of other sources, and you can get high stat artifice armor, which is significantly better than the raid armor in my opinion. As far as challenge goes, I will say that the original Root of Nightmares and the contest mode was very easy and got a lot of criticism for being too easy. And I will say that the Master Raid is decently challenging. I kind of like that there's different surges. Initially, I thought it might not be as fun, but you can see right here, we ended up using solar rockets instead of using our hotheads because it's solar surge and strand surge, and it was also shotgun surge, I believe. So we didn't end up using shotguns on this particular boss because that wouldn't really make much sense. You'd have to hop on the plate and then rush the boss with a bunch of shotguns. But it is kind of cool to mix up the meta a little bit. I actually got to bust out the Haze and Vengeance, so I don't really use this rocket too often, but it was nice to have that. So I actually don't mind it in terms of challenge. I think it's a pretty solid challenge. I know that LFG teams out there will struggle with this one, especially as people will probably come unprepared. So I would highly recommend, if you are going to go into this with LFG teammates or with some goofy goobers out there, make sure you spec out for some solid builds, have some warlocks on your team, and try to use the appropriate weapons for the encounter, because using the proper surges makes a big difference. As for the mechanics of the first encounter challenge, I'm actually a big fan of this one. I know some people will dislike that, but I'm actually a big fan of this one because it adds a proper new mechanic and it requires some new teamwork in order to beat this one. Ordinarily, or sometimes at least, we get these raid challenges where you are meant to do something, but you just do the raid exactly as you've been doing it before. If you remember, like Master Vault of Glass, killing Templar, you just did everything the exact same. It wasn't too hard of a challenge. You just melt the Templar and you win. And this happens in a variety of different challenges throughout raids, throughout history. And I kind of like it when there's a mechanic that's added, as long as it's not too tedious. Like, for example, if the encounter normally takes 3 minutes to beat, but you have to do the challenge and it requires, doing multiple waves. When it becomes a bit tedious, I don't like it, but this one's actually pretty good. You have to get the light buff. You have to make sure that you kill the tormentors with the light buff. It's not too bad of a challenge. You can disrupt your teammates if you end up jumping in that aura and shooting it when the runners are trying to go around. So I'm actually a big fan of this challenge. Let me know if you agree or disagree with that. The last bit I will mention is that there are no enhanced traits on the Adept Weapons, which is definitely frustrating, but Bungie has addressed this. They've said that this is an issue that they're working on right now and that the mid-season update will fix this. So hang on to all of your adepts, all of the adepts you get this week in terms of the sidearm, and all the adepts you get next week. And we don't know the exact timeline of the mid-season update, but whenever that does come out, the adepts will then have enhanced traits on them. So your god rolls will become really, really good and will be some of the best weapons in the game. Easily the best weapons for the raid and for these raid encounters and stuff. The best versions of them, that is, at least, because you've got the normal version, the crafted version, and then the adept versions will be the best. The one part I am a little bit disappointed about, though, is that there were no double perks on the adepts. I don't understand why they didn't do that. That was a really nice update that they had, like with, for example, the Vault of Glass weapons. Like Fatebringer had like double perks on all of the adepts. I don't know why they went that route. Maybe due to the fact that you're able to change these weapons. Maybe they wanted to add some less variety within them, but I feel like there should have at least been one double perk slot on the adepts. Let me know if you agree or disagree with that down below. And let me know your thoughts on the Master Raid overall. Have you completed it yet? Are you going to jump in there? Does the loot look desirable to you? Make sure to subscribe, though. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Later.